Building assets, changing lives. What one St. Louis nonprofit is doing to connect people to financial resources. That's next on City Corner. Steve Potter, and welcome to City Corner. Justine Petersen is a nonprofit organization that works to help low to moderate income families and individuals build their assets to improve their lives. And here to talk about that, please welcome the organization's Chief of Communications, Galen Gondolfi, and Senior Housing Counselor, Chonda Deboise. Welcome to you both.
Thank you.
Good to be here, thanks.
Galen, if I could start a little background, if we could. Justine Petersen is a national organization?
It's a good question. We're actually locally based, but
really?
We actually do have national reach. We're also part of a credit building coalition in Chicago, and we'll talk a lot about credit building today, that is raising people's credit scores and building credit scores as opposed to repairing or cleaning. And we also have an involvement with Credit Building Coalition in Los Angeles. But we're part of something called CBA, Credit Builders Alliance, and that has national reach as well. So yes, we do have a national presence, but most of our groundwork is right here in the St. Louis metro area.
And Chandra, an important part for people to remember is that you're a nonprofit.
Yes, we are a nonprofit organization. That what we do is we basically charge a fee for the services in our housing department that kind of fuels the company and along with some of our other opportunities.
I find the name really interesting because it's named after a person, which is sort of unusual as opposed to some other sort of name that describes what they do.
No, of course.
So what's the story of Justine Petersen? Who was this person?
Right. We were named after the Justine Petersen, and Justine passed about 16 years ago. The organization's named in her honor.
That was a St. Louis person?
By all means, yeah. Justine was an early pioneer in partnering with local financial institutions, banks, on progressive mortgage products for St. Louis families. And our executive director, Rob Boyle, was a colleague of Justine's, and when she passed, he named this organization in her honor. So we carry on her spirit in terms of asset building as a way to actually economically empower people. We also like to think about Justine Petersen as a nonprofit alternative to all the other for-profit entities that have names like Charles Schwab, A.G. Edwards, Edward Jones, what have you.
So no commissions when it comes to this one, right?
Understood, yes.
Would you both maybe talk a little bit about your slogan, for want of a better word, building assets, changing lives?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
China wants to say a few things.
Okay, well, sure. The model that we have at Justine Petersen is that the biggest asset, one of the biggest assets that an individual can have is their credit score. So we deal a lot with our clients, whether they're coming through our program for home ownership or small businesses. We deal a lot with them on building their credit score, which is going to be their largest asset as it affects everything usually that we do in life, whether it's purchasing car insurance or purchasing a home, or so that has a lot to do with building assets, which in effect changes lives.
Yep, go ahead.
We're a HUD certified counseling agency, and that's how we began, and that's essentially allowing people to buy a home, first-time home ownership, and that's obviously a really valuable asset. In addition, we do micro-lending, small business lending through the Small Business Administration, so we build assets by helping people start businesses and expand businesses. But as Chonda mentioned, related to all of that is this idea of a credit score. So we essentially say this at Justine Petersen: everyone who walks through the door, regardless if you're interested in buying a house or having a small business, can build an asset by raising their credit score. And in fact, a credit score, studies have done, a high credit score can save you close to $250,000 over your lifetime. So we very much place a great amount of emphasis on this whole idea of your credit score and the fact that your credit score is indeed an asset.
Yeah, I've got a lot of questions about that we'll get to a little bit later, but would you want to talk a little bit about your housing services and how the market has changed over the last few years, and has it changed that much?
Sure, the market has definitely changed in all areas, really, and mostly in the areas where we deal. We see a lot of where, the homes that are in areas that used to cost anywhere from $150 to $2,000. Most first-time home buyers or home purchasers at all are really able to get into a lot of those areas for almost half of that. So the market has definitely changed. The lending guidelines have changed. They've tightened. Interest rates, of course, have lowered. But it's still very difficult to be able to get into where a lot of the clients want to be.
Yeah, how has that, that housing market bust that we've been through and hopefully are recovering from, how's that affected the people that you work for?
Well, a lot of what we do is still basically the same in teaching them about building their credit score. And once the credit score is built, the process basically is still the same. So the people that we work with, a lot of people come in and they think, well, I probably can't buy a house.
Well, isn't it harder these days?
It is a little bit harder, like I said, because the lending guidelines have tightened, but it's still very possible with the process that we created so many years ago. It helps a lot now because the process is still the same for us. We still talk about the same things in building the credit score and actually having open, active lines of credit that assist. So that part is usually the hardest part.
Right.
The products that we focus on are FHA loan products as well as loans that fall under the Community Reinvestment Act that local banks offer. And in the 15 years that Justine Petersen has been a HUD certified counseling agency, obviously the housing market has went up and down. And what we're suffering from now is this post-predatory lending period when there were such things as stated loan products, which Justine Petersen didn't support and such. Right. And if anything, there is a spike in foreclosure issues and counseling people on foreclosure prevention. And so we're a HUD certified counseling agency in terms of foreclosure issues with a focus on the Illinois side. We have a contract with the Illinois Housing Development Authority on offering foreclosure intervention services. So it's definitely been an up and down road, or ride, I should rather, in terms of the housing market. But as Chonda mentioned, it's still opportune for people to purchase, and these are ethical loan products that essentially would have a low interest rate and would be a fixed rate.
And maybe now with housing prices, it's a good time.
Very true.
It's a good time to buy. You talk about that predatory lending period, and a lot of people got in trouble, didn't they?
They did.
I mean, a lot of people, probably a lot of people that shouldn't have qualified for loans were qualified, and that's one thing. You're trying to make sure people qualify.
Exactly.
Am I right?
Yes.
By all means, yeah. A lot of it is the process, and that is, I'll be candid, during the time that stated income loans existed, subprime lending that is, when it was at its zenith, no one essentially had the patience to go through a HUD certified counseling agency that is raising your credit score, taking care of other issues, when they in fact could possibly go next door to a brokerage opened up by Tom, Dick, and Harry and close on a house in 3 weeks. Right. And as a whole, we're all paying that price now.
We are, yeah.
Okay. You use the term foreclosure intervention. Would you define that for me?
Sure. I'll say this much, and that is we put a lot of emphasis on lexicon, on our word choice, and that is it's foreclosure intervention as opposed to prevention. At this moment, we're not able to do foreclosure intervention counseling for Missouri residents. Our contract is with the Illinois Housing Development Authority, so it's actually Metro East. But what's important here is to address late pays on your mortgage before you're actually confronting foreclosure. So in fact, it's foreclosure intervention early on, as opposed to being at a stage where you've already been handed your foreclosure notice, where at that point it can possibly even be too late.
So is that a problem a lot of people get into, is they wait too late to do something about it?
Yeah, it is. People start getting behind and they figure, well, there isn't a whole lot that I can do or something like that. And then at the last minute, they're deciding, well, I need to call to try to save my house once they're getting those notices from the lender. So we're trying to let people know that it's important that if you foresee that you're going to be late or that you're going to have a problem, that you contact somebody to be able to, specifically a HUD counseling agency that is going to be able to not charge you for, being able to receive that assistance that shouldn't be charged for.
And ideally what happens is your loan can be modified. And what does that mean? The interest rate could possibly be lowered and your monthly payment could be lowered.
Mm-hmm. So people have to be careful about who they're dealing with when they're going through these type of procedures, right?
Absolutely.
By all means, related to that is this whole issue of reverse mortgages. Home equity.
Now, I've heard of that. Explain that, though, because I'm not exactly sure what that is.
The acronym is HECM, Home Equity Conversion Mortgage. And what does that mean? Well, it's for seniors that have owned their home a good amount of time. I believe you have to be 62 or older to qualify. And essentially, you're borrowing on the equity of your house. And it's a reverse mortgage, which means you could receive a payout monthly from the investment you've made in your home. What's important here is that no one can sign on a dotted line with any financial institution on a reverse mortgage loan without first going through a HUD counseling agency like Justine Petersen to receive her certificate. And the reason is this: the government wants to make sure, they want to ensure that every senior citizen is aware of the pros and cons of a reverse mortgage. Justine Petersen is in no means supporting or a blanket policy on supporting home equity mortgages, but you have to look at each individual and know the tailored situation.
Yeah, so our reverse mortgage is always a good idea. I mean, so it's when a person has paid their house off and they need money, the house is sort of bought back from them and they're receiving income for the rest of their lives. Then, of course, they have no assets when they die to pass on. That would be the downside of it, right?
That would be one of the downsides of it. But the reverse mortgage loans, once they do pass on, those can't be transferred to children. You know, if the children want the house or if the spouses want to keep the house that aren't on the reverse mortgage, they of course would have to purchase the home back, but they would not be liable for that mortgage at that point.
And I guess would the positive side be to it? I mean, if you lived a long time, you're never, if you have a reverse mortgage, you're not going to be thrown out of your house at any time, even if you exceed what the house is worth.
Correct.
Let me just say that the amortization is incredibly generous in terms of the longevity of a home equity mortgage. But to specifically address the idea, is it good for everyone? No. We have to look at each situation and make a decision.
Right.
Well, when we come back, could we talk more specifically about who qualifies for your services? And we've got other questions too. We're talking about Justine Petersen and building assets and changing lives. And we'll be back with more City Corner right after this.
To the men and women of the United States Armed Forces, the USO is home. The USO depends on the generosity of the American people, people just like you. To find out how you can help, visit us at uso.org. The USO, until everyone comes home.
Did you vote in the last election? I know I would have. I'd want my voice to be heard. You see, the only way your ideas can count is for our elected officials to hear from you. My dad says it's easy. Just learn about the process and vote. So you have all this power to really make a difference. And you didn't take time to vote? Am I missing something?
Learn how to make your ideas count by logging on to www.representativedemocracy.org.
Experience St. Louis!
I'm Steve Potter, and welcome back to City Corner. We're talking with Galen, Gondolfi, and Chonda Deboise about Justine Petersen, which is a nonprofit organization which began in St. Louis to help low to moderate income families and individuals build their assets, and you help them connect with financial resources. What didn't I say?
You know what? We actually can help any socioeconomic demographic.
Really?
And what's interesting with the recession, credit crunch, whatever you want to call it, everyone's coming through our doors. And as we had spoken earlier about this idea of raising your credit scores, many people have blemished credit because of the recession, because of losing their job, because they became behind on credit card bills on their home mortgage. So credit scores have taken a beating. Hence, our doors are pretty busy now in terms of people asking for advice on how to build their credit, looking for tools, looking for products to build their credit. We do credit builder loans. We do a secured credit card through Banamex USA, things of that nature. So we're actually open to all and everyone for credit building, for home purchase, as well as for small businesses.
Interesting. Well, you talk about building credit and repairing credit. To me, those words were always sort of interchangeable, but they're not?
They are not.
Set me straight then, Chonda.
Okay, so credit repair, what we hear a lot of with credit repair companies is they're sending out letters once a month, every month, or every couple of weeks or something like that to remove stuff off of credit. When the bigger focus on credit repair, with credit building, is actually doing things to increase the score. Hence, you know, taking off something that happened to you 5 years ago is not really going to increase your credit score. The only thing that impacts moving a credit score up is open, active lines of credit where you're actively making monthly payments on them, or with credit cards where you're keeping the balance below a third of the credit limit, and a lot of people don't understand that. So that's where we try to help people understand the difference in credit building from credit repair. We don't do credit repair. We teach that you need to build your credit based on, you know, the credit bureaus want to know, what are you doing for them now?
What about those 3 credit bureaus? Is that something that we should keep our eye on? What do you advise people about that? You know, I'm always getting these phone calls. You get these anonymous phone calls about lower your credit, build your credit, and lower your interest rates, which, you know, I don't pay any attention to.
All
but
3 scores are important. TransUnion, Equifax, Experian. You want 700s for all 3 credit bureaus. That said, your FICO score or your mid score, that is, if you have 3 credit scores from 3 different credit bureaus, the one that falls in the middle, more so than not, is what a bank is going to look at. But you want all 3 to be healthy. As Chonda mentioned, it's all about active trade lines. The credit score is like the human body. It needs to be active. You always need to be moving forward, that is, having active lines. It doesn't mean having debt. So for example, you could have a secured credit card or an unsecured credit card, and you don't even need to have a balance on there. Just go and put gas in. I used to say put $10 of gas in or 20, now you have to put in 40. The whole idea is that not to consume, but to merely pay on time each month, and your credit score will rise. Quickly, I want to say this. If you merely focus on cleaning up your credit, your score will plateau. It will never grow. So that is the emphasis on building credit, having active credit. And Justine Petersen is actually one of the leaders in the nonprofit world from a national perspective on this idea of building credit as opposed to repairing.
Yeah, I like what you said about gasoline. I don't think $10 would get you from here back to work, would it?
That's correct.
Not these days. What is the CDFI?
Sure. Chonda had mentioned earlier that Justine Petersen is a 501c3. We also have something called a Community Development Financial Institution, a CDFI, which is a for-profit entity. And what it does is that it also loans dollars to those small business people and others who are in need of access to capital. It's essentially a community bank, and it's community money. And in fact, recently we received $1.5 million from the federal CDFI fund, earmarked for businesses here in St. Louis. So what does CDFI do? Well, let's say a bank isn't in a position to loan money to someone. Maybe they don't have a high credit score, maybe it's other issues. The role of the CDFI is access to capital, make money available and affordable for a small business person that later they can perhaps refinance with a bank. So again, I always emphasize that it's community money. That is, if you're borrowing money and you want to pay it back on time, because the next entrepreneur can benefit from that. So it's essentially one micro business helping the next.
Yeah, and when I was doing a little research for this program, I was reading some articles and things about some of the businesses that you've assisted. And we should make the point that's not just in St. Louis, but I know you work a lot in Madison County, Illinois as well.
Correct, yeah. We actually service 4 counties in Illinois and are going to be doing microlending statewide in Missouri with a focus in Kansas City here in the next few quarters. So yeah, we have a large jurisdiction in terms of doing microlending as well as home loan financing. And again, microlending is essentially loans under $50,000. Our average loan last year was around $12,000 for businesses that are either trying to start up or expand.
Yeah, I live in downtown Alton, and we were talking, there's a little business that's just opened blocks from where I live. It's a little barbecue place, and you said you guys played a role in that.
That's right. That's Southern Girls Barbecue.
Southern Girls Barbecue.
We'll go ahead and shamelessly promote Southern Girls Barbecue today. But yeah, his name is Keith Davis, a startup business. Again, this whole idea of, wow, people starting up a business in hard times like this. Many banks aren't in a position to do that. So an organization like Justine Petersen can assist. We partner with banks, so the whole idea is to get that customer back to a bank someday for a larger loan and a loan perhaps at a lower interest rate. But many have sought entrepreneurship during the credit crunch, the economic downturn. Many people who have lost their job have turned to starting their own business.
Right, and it's been tough getting money from conventional banks the last few years, right, to start a business. I mean, some of them are, my impression is they're not loaning any money.
I will say this much, it's become more stringent. It is true some banks may have a policy not to loan to any startup, but yeah, it's very tight. And it's gonna be a while before I think banks understand that they're more comfortable with the risk and such. So again, the role of Justine Petersen is to ensure that there's access to capital for small business people, both existing businesses who want to expand and for those who are seeking a startup.
I'm curious how both of you got into this. You've both been with Justine Petersen a number of years. 12 and 9 or something like that?
Yeah.
I mean,
9 years for me?
Yeah.
14.
14 for you.
Okay.
Well, you're obviously passionate about what you do. I'm just curious, Chonda, if I can start with you, why you believe in this so much and why you're, devoting your life to this.
Well, when I first came into Justine Petersen, I came in as a potential homeowner.
Really?
So I came in to purchase my first home.
As a client?
I did, and came in and met with the gentleman who's now the CEO, Robert Boyle, and said I want to buy a house. I was very young at the time, had no credit scores, didn't really know much except that I didn't like renting. So came in, and through the services that I received, the loan product was great. Decided that, this is something that I could really get behind to help other people. So.
And I know, Galen, that you're sort of known for being a community activist in some respect yourself in Benton Park and on Cherokee Street, that you've been involved in things. Is that where your interest comes from?
Yeah, I've actually always worked in community development field, Washington, D.C., Chicago, Boston. And so when I relocated here to St. Louis, Justine Petersen seemed to be a perfect fit. Just like Chonda, I was also a client, and then later actually took a job with Justine Petersen. So I can't say we can guarantee employment for every client at Justine Petersen, but we'll make every attempt.
It says a lot, though, when a client ends up working for the company. Right. We've got a few minutes left. Let's talk about payday lending. Boy, and that's been in the news a lot, and I know there are things going on in the state legislatures to rein in payday lending and the exorbitant interest rates they charge.
No, it is. Talking of interest rates, 455% was the average interest rate of a payday loan in the state of Missouri last quarter. In Illinois, actually, the interest rate is capped, but fees are not capped. We essentially oppose payday lending at Justine Petersen. We want to offer alternatives to that. 75% of payday loans in the state of Missouri are taken out to pay a previous payday loan. It becomes an incredibly vicious cycle. People end up digging deeper and deeper. So again, we're against payday lending. We support people having mainstream financial banking relationships. That is the idea of actually banking with a bank. We support banking with a bank because in the end, you actually do save money, and it's good to have that legitimate banking relationship. So again, we want people to be mindful of payday lending.
Never do a payday loan.
There we go.
That's sort of the bottom line, don't you think?
That's a bumper sticker. Yeah.
In the time we have remaining, could we maybe close with some success stories in housing or micro lending, or let's end on a positive note?
Sure.
Sure. One of our more recent success stories in the housing department is we worked with an individual for some time to rebuild their credit score. once the credit score was up, we worked with them on debt to income ratio, making sure that they understand not to consume, but just to play the credit game to get the score up. And once they were there, they were able to purchase a first-time homebuyer loan, which is a CRA, Community Reinvestment Act loan product, the CRA loan. Able to get into the house with $1,000 out of pocket. You know, it's a 30-year fixed conventional loan that has no private mortgage insurance. So,
yeah. And I wonder how many people don't even know what their credit score is.
yeah.
True. And it plays such a big role.
It
yeah.
does.
Galen, a success
Yeah,
story?
in terms of small businesses, you know, I'm going to mention Sean McKee, who actually I think has been on this program at one point. This afternoon, he'll open up his second location. He has something called the Juice Box, which is reimagining the corner store. And that is this whole idea of having healthy and organic foods
Is that up
available.
in North?
In Grand Center, actually, is his location that he'll be opening this afternoon. His current location is on Arsenal near Gravois. And Sean essentially started with a $1,200 loan from Justine Petersen. We collateralized, I think, an '84 Cavalier, and it led to this. I mean, he went from, I'll be honest, he relocated to St. Louis, started living in a one-bedroom apartment, and in the last year, he's been invited to the White House and met Michelle Obama, so it's pretty exciting stuff.
Wow, and you're totally responsible for that?
Somewhat, no.
What should an individual do or a family do if they're interested in finding out more about this? What's the first step they take as far as finding out if Justine Petersen can help them? And how do you qualify?
Sure. First of all, our phone number is 314-533-2411, 314-533-2411. We are, you can access through our website, JustinePetersen.org, and Petersen spelled S-E-N, so it's JustinePetersen, S-E-N.org. I want to say this, if you have any financial issue that you have a question about, I want you to call Justine Petersen. I think we should be the first point of contact on giving you, if anything, some phone counsel on your situation. Even if it's about trying to get a better insurance rate. And why I say that is that insurance is actually something that's based on your credit score, and almost everybody in St. Louis has car insurance or homeowners insurance or what have you. In terms of qualifying, again, it's not so much about qualifying, it's so much about addressing your need. That is, we are open to all populations in terms of socioeconomics. We feel that building your credit score is something that everyone can benefit from.
Well, coming up in just a few seconds on the screen, we'll have contact information, and you've got a great website, so I'd recommend people go to that because you have a lot of different services. There really is a lot to look at. So if any of this has sparked an interest in you at home, go to the Justine Petersen website that you'll see on the screen in a minute and contact them. I guess is make that call or contact them on the web. But we want to thank you both so much. It's a fascinating story, something I didn't know anything about, and I didn't realize the impact that you're having throughout the entire metropolitan community. So Chonda and Galen, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Steve Potter. That's it for this edition of City Corner. Thanks for watching today, and we'll see you next time. Bye.